Inshallah ta'ala, we tell the story of the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. We're at that point where we covered the second bay'ah of Al-Aqaba, the arrangements that were made in Medina for people to make it there safely. And I told you a few stories of people who actually immigrated and went from Medina to Mecca, from Mecca to Yathrib. And there were different types of hijrah. Some people, they went on their own because they had enough support and they had wealth and they had strength. And some of them were not. And the Prophet ﷺ would often pair up those who had that strength with those who were weak. Like if he knew someone was able to immigrate on their own without the requirement of anyone protecting them, he would pair up with them someone who required protection just to get them along to Yathrib. This was a pretty big ordeal to get people from Mecca to Yathrib. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gathered the Sahaba after Bay'at al-Aqaba and he told them, قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُم مِّمَّا أَنْتُمْ فِيهِ مَخْرَجًا وَقَدْ جَعَلَ لَكُمْ دَارًا تَذْهَبُونَ إِلَيْهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for you a way out of the difficulties that you are all in right now. And He has provided for you a place to go to. And he explained to them what the plan was. And people started to prepare themselves. And over the course of the next 6 to 7 months, the majority of people who could immigrate from Mecca to Yathrib did. The Prophet ﷺ had people whose job was to do this specifically, like Marthad ibn Abi Marthad, radiallahu anhu, and Umar ibn al-Khattab, amongst others, who all they did, in some narrations say Hamza, and all they did was just move people from Mecca to Yathrib and come back again and do that, just to help them along the way. It was very dangerous to travel through Arabia on your own. Or even in groups it was dangerous. It's where people got raided and they would be enslaved or killed or even worse sometimes. So it was not a simple thing for you to go from one city to the other, especially when it's 400 kilometers away, especially if they're families and there are children and there are women. This is a very difficult thing to do. During the time of Hajj, they would go in large caravans to protect people. That was the main reason they went in these large. It's very hard actually to travel in large groups on camels and on foot. It's almost impossible. It's not in your best interest if you want to get where you're going quicker. But you do it for the sake of protection, because if the moment you break off alone, then you're subject to being you're harmed by the people who raid, the hooligans on the road that can take people's lives. So I talked about examples. I gave the example of Abu Salama and Salama and how it took a year basically for them to be reunited. The example of Suhaib, who lost everything. They took away he had put all his merchandise on 9 camels and they took it all away from him, including his clothing, radiallahu anhu. And the Prophet ﷺ would tell him, رَبِحَ الْبَيْعُ أَبَا يَحْيَى, and he would recite upon him verses that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ regarding this incident. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ بِتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. And there are amongst human beings, there are people who will give up themselves, everything that they have. Yashri nafsa, they'll sell themselves, everything they have, for the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah basirun bil ibad, Allah sees what is it His servants are doing, as recognition for Sayyidina Suhaib radiallahu anhu. And the example of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, who was very different. He left with a big bang, and he challenged people, and he took a bunch with him radiallahu anhu ardah, leading us to the point of the story where all those who can migrate did. And Quraysh now was not unaware of what was happening, because it was obvious. The number of people that had left Mecca, there was a demographic change basically in Mecca, and a change in Medina, in Yathrib. It wasn't called Medina yet, I keep on saying that, but it's still called Yathrib. It's only called Medina when he makes it there, alayhi salam. It's one of the points we'll talk about, inshallah. So Quraysh knows that people are moving from one place to the other, and they know at some point the Prophet ﷺ is going to do that as well. So they meet Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan and a bunch of other nobles of Quraysh that they meet, and the goal of this meeting is to establish what are we going to do. How are we going to deal with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So what do we do? So they came up with 3 separate ideas. The first one, that they would keep him captive. They would basically put chains on him and keep him hidden in a house. فقالوا إن فعلتم هذا فكه بنو هاشم. His tribe will find a way, and they'll come in, they'll set him free. And that's not going to work. That's a very, very temporary solution. It's not going to work. فقالوا إذا نخرجه. We get him out of Mecca altogether. Oops. What do I do here? Yeah. We get him to leave يعني Mecca altogether. We send him out. فقالوا إذن يجمع العرب ويرجع. If you let him out, he's going to go and talk to the Arab, and people are going to believe in him, and then he'll bring them all and come back to us. And then the third suggestion that we kill him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say, well, who's going to do that? Because once you do that, you're going to take upon yourself the wrath of Bani Hashim. Like the whole clan will fight us for him. In addition to the Muslim people who believe in him. فقالوا نوزع دمه بين القبائل. This was the idea. That we will strike him in a form where it's not one person who killed him. It's a group of people, each of them coming from a different tribe. And Banu Hashim can't fight all the tribes. It's too much for them. So they'll have to accept the diya. They'll have to accept the payment for the loss of life. And then it'll end like that. And that's what the ayah in Surah Al-Anfal. وَإِذْ يَمْكُرُ بِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِيُثْبِتُوكَ أَوْ يَقْتُلُوكَ أَوْ يُخْرِجُوكَ وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. When the disbelievers, they plotted against you to chain you down or murder you or kick you out of your country. And they are plotting, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plots as well, and He is the best of those who plot, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was their idea, and they prepared for that. They prepared for this peace to actually do this, and they set a timing for it. They set a time to go to kill him, alayhi salatu wasalam. And Jibreel alayhi salam let him know when that was going to be. Like he had information alayhi salatu wasalam, of what night or what time that was going to be. In the meantime, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu would come to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in the midst of this, and he would tell him, Ya Rasulullah, I'm ready to leave, I'm going to leave. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam would tell him, Ala rislika, فإنه لم يؤذن لي بعد. Take some time. I'm still, فإني أرجو أن يؤذن لي. Meaning, be patient, don't leave yet. I am hoping that I get my permission to leave Mecca soon. See, this is an important piece. Prophets, messengers, are not allowed to leave the city, town, or area that they were sent to without permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when they're sent to a certain group of people, they have to stay there. They can't leave. Not for any reason. Like they have to stay there permanently. They can obviously go on journeys for rizq or for picnics and stuff like that. They can do these things, but they can't move their residence. They can't walk out, and that's why Yunus alayhi salam was in that predicament. Because Yunus alayhi salam, when he gave his people the warning of punishment, he thought that he was very upset with them because they didn't believe. So he left in anger that they got themselves to this point of punishment. So he left in anger for them, out of love for them. He left, but he didn't ask for permission, and he knows that it was a mistake. He shouldn't have done that, and that's why he was punished. Alayhi salatu wasalam. So no prophet is allowed to leave his people without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa taala. Musa alayhi salam, when he left the Midian, he wasn't a prophet yet. Musa was not a messenger yet, so he could go. Once he was back in Egypt, and he was given prophecy, he couldn't leave Egypt until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to leave. That's why in the Quran you say, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ أَنْ أَسْرِي بِعِبَادِ أَنْ أَسْرِي. Leave at night. You find that in Surah Al-Lut, in the story of Lut. وَأَسْرِ بِأَهْلِكَ بِقِطَعٍ مِّنَ اللَّيْلِ. So there's a command that, okay, now you can leave, because they can't just leave. So the Prophet ﷺ, he can't just leave. He has to wait until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him the permission to actually leave Mecca. And he was finally offered and told that he could leave. Once Jibreel came and told him the plot and the timing for it, the night that Quraysh was going to prepare themselves to do it, the Prophet ﷺ was given permission to leave. Now he had a number he plans this out alayhi salatu wasalam with a lot of elements here. Like there's a lot of planning that goes into this one action. Now, mind you, that our calendar is called the Hijri calendar, right? We've got this. It dates back to this day or to this year, right? We don't have the calendar of Muslims basically does not start from his prophecy alayhi salatu wasalam. Doesn't start from the night in Ghar Hira, which you could say it was a pretty big deal. It doesn't start with the day he was born, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is also a pretty big deal. Or the day he passed away, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is also, all these are important moments. Why out of all of them, Hijrah, and I'll tell you, there's a reason of why Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab chose this day specifically. Out of all of the different, you could choose Badr. We have a Badri calendar instead of a Hijri calendar. The day that they, in the Quran is celebrated a lot. But they chose the Hijrah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and there's a reason for why he did. Then I'll point it out in a moment, inshallah. So he planned for alayhi salatu wasalam First thing is that he's going to keep Ali radiallahu anhu behind. So Sayyidina Ali is around 21, 22, 23, something like that. He's in his early 20s. So the Prophet ﷺ tells him that in order for this to work, you're going to have to stay behind. And in order for me to get out safe, you have to sleep in my place outside in the afternoon, time and time again. And so Quraysh has spies. They're always watching him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he put his bed, alayhi salatu wasalam, outside in the front yard. And the Arabic homes, they have like a hosh where you're sitting under the sky, but there are walls instead of fences. There are walls. So alayhi salatu wasalam, he put the bed outside instead of inside. And this in the Middle East, you commonly will sleep outside because of the weather. And he made Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, and he alayhi salam would sleep in that bed every day, during the day and during the night, right? And he did that because he was trying to establish a norm for Quraysh. He wanted Quraysh to watch him every day, because they did. And not only did they watch him, alayhi salatu wasalam, sleeping, they would throw stones at him, alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was sleeping. Like they would take a couple of rocks and then they would throw at him, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he wouldn't show any weakness, but he would stay. And he did this so that the day he left, he could put Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu in his place, and it would buy him some time. Because Quraysh is now used to the Prophet ﷺ sleeping in that bed. So when they look over the wall and they see someone sleeping, they'll think it's him ﷺ, because this has been the norm for the last couple of months. So he had prepared him by doing this for at least a few months, sleeping outside and undergoing this abuse of them throwing rocks at him ﷺ. So he explained to Sayyidina Ali, sleep in my place, don't worry about it. Don't move until they break in. Don't move. Don't show them any. Don't let them know that it's not me. Just stay where you are. They will give you. They'll let you go. And then when they do, give back all of the amanat. The Prophet ﷺ ran a business. Some say it's a business. Some say it's just something he did ﷺ, for the sake of Allah, where he would hold on to amana for someone. Like if you wanted to entrust something valuable to you and you needed to travel, he would hold it for you, alayhi salatu wasalam, and keep it for you. And then he would give it back to you when you came back. And he had a lot of amanat for Quraysh in his house. Like he held a lot of amanat for them. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he wanted Ali to stay behind so that someone could return all these amanat to people. Because it's not appropriate for him to, and this is obviously a topic that is maybe a little bit too much. I don't want to sidetrack too much. But the fact that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam did not think that just because they are trying to kill him, or they're kicking him out of his country, or they are basically plotting against him, that it made it okay for him to betray these trusts, or take them with him, or maybe burn them, or break them, or do something with them. He did not see that to be appropriate, alayhi salatu wasalam. He was entrusted with something, he was going to give it back to those who it was entrusted with, even though they were actually kicking him out of his home, alayhi salatu wasalam, and they were trying, that night they would try to kill him. The 9 people were going to show up. The 9 young men, each from a tribe with a sword, was going to show up that day. And at his house waiting for him, alayhi salatu wasalam, to wake up. But he kept Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu behind him to do this. So the day comes. Alayhi salatu wasalam puts Ali in his spot. And he leaves alayhi salatu wasalam at noon, right in the middle of the day. No one moves around noon in Arabia. It's way too hot. And it's way too dangerous, you'll get a sunstroke. So people don't do it. So alayhi salatu he put it, left around his head so people couldn't recognize him. And he went from the back route, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he went in the middle of the day and he went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's house. And he knocks on the door. So Abu Bakr opens. تقول عائشة فأتانا في وقت لم يكن يأتينا فيه. He came to us during a time he never came to us, alayhi salatu. It was just very weird for him to knock at our door during the middle of. No one does this and after Dhuhr. If you live in the Middle East, no one visits anybody at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock noon. So he knocks on the Prophet on Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's door. Abu Bakr opens up. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam says, هل عندك أحد في البيت أخرجهم. If there's anyone here in your house, get them out. I want to talk to you privately. فيقول أبو بكر إنما هم بنتايا وأهلي أهلك يا رسول الله. It's just my 2 daughters and my wife, your family. There's no one here for you to. فقال يا أبا بكر فإن الله قد أذن لي. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me the permission to leave today. يقول أبو بكر تقول عائشة فقال أبو بكر الصحبة, companionship. Do I get to? فقال نعم يا أبا بكر. Yes, الصحبة. تقول عائشة فبكى أبو بكر فما رأيت أحدا يبكي فرحا كأبي بكر يومها. And Abu Bakr started to cry, and I'd never seen anyone cry tears of happiness aside from Abu Bakr. And he started to sob radiallahu anhu, and because he's so happy that he's going to be able to perform his hijrah with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And Aisha standing there saying, I've never seen, what are you doing? You should be happy. And he's sobbing radiallahu anhu out of happiness that he's going to be. يقول أبو بكر فإن عندي يا رسول الله ناقتين واحدة لي وواحدة لك. I have two camels. I prepared them. I was hoping for this. I have them. One for me and one for you. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم بالثمن. I pay you for it. فقال أبو بكر يا رسول الله. What do you mean pay me for it? No, I don't want the فقال بالثمن. Either I pay you for it or I don't take it. The reason why he said that alayhi salatu wasalam is because he wanted the full ajr. He wanted the full ajr of what he was about to do. Because he realized what was about to happen and how risky and dangerous this journey was going to be. And he didn't want to lose any aspect of the reward. He wanted even the transportation that he was going to use to be something he paid for himself. Abu Bakr gets the reward for the intention, but he wants the actual reward for what he's going to do. And he paid Abu Bakr. Like, I'm going to give you, because this is the naqah is going to be something I bought, so that I get the full reward. This was how he saw the importance of ajr, alayhi salatu wasalam. He thought about these things. He thought about the details of these things, to make sure that whatever he was doing, he was going to get the full reward, or he was aiming at least for the full reward, and he was not going to give up any of that for any reason. He didn't need to accept this as a gift and then lose some of the reward because the camel wasn't actually yours, someone else gave it to you. No, I bought it with my own money too. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in. So he would take Abu Bakr, they would take went in the opposite direction, alayhi salatu wasalam. A 2.5 hour opposite direction journey, by the way. If you ever go to, for this you should go see Ghar Thawr. It's 2.5 hours, it's not an easy journey to make. As he's going in that direction, alayhi salatu wasalam, they would stand on a small hill. And he would look, alayhi salatu wasalam, at Mecca. And there's a long narration where he would stand there, alayhi salatu wasalam, he would say, أَلَا إِنَّكِ أَحَبُّ بِلَادِ اللَّهِ إِلَيْهِ. Indeed, you are the most beloved country of all countries to my heart. وَلَوْلَا أَنَّ قَوْمَكِ أَخْرَجُونِي مِنْكِ مَا خَرَجْتِ. If it wasn't for the fact that your people kicked me out of you, like actually forced me out, I would have never left. And he would stand there and he would make dua, alayhi salatu wasalam, for Mecca. And he would make dua that he would be offered the ability one day to come back to Mecca. And that he would be, this is someone who loves his country. He loves his city. He loves his people. This is important. This is important for you. This is where we live. Most people here are Canadians, or about to be. And there's obviously barakah in that. This land that you stand on, this is, for the lack of a better analogy, this is your aunt, right? Your motherland is somewhere else. You just need to look at the mirror, take a look at this, look at your face. She didn't give birth to you. It's another one that did. She's your aunt. She deserves your birr, for sure. She is worthy of your birr, of taking care of her, of honoring her, of taking care of the environment upon her and worshipping Allah upon her. She deserves all of that from you. But you need to look at that mirror, look in the mirror and see that there is also a mother earth for you, where you came from, that you hail from, that you also owe something. You owe her too. Never ever forget that. It's important. There's nothing wrong with saying these things. There's nothing racist about it. There's nothing discriminative or discriminatory about it. This is just the reality of how earth is. Every piece of earth produced people with a certain culture and certain appearances. And that's how earth is. Earth is diverse and it produces people. The beauty of the human race, the beauty of this planet is the diversity of the creation that exists upon it. Is the diversity of it. And actually that biodiversity, once it's gone, we're all gone. Like once we ruin that biodiversity, we all die. Like no one's going to be left around. What we celebrate as humans and as creations, really, as living things on this planet, is the diversity of it all. It was never designed for, the design was never that we all should be the same, look the same, speak the same, be the same. The only thing that we should be similar in is Tawheed, is La ilaha illallah, is the acknowledgement of the one creator of all of us. That's all. That's what we are being asked to do. That's it. Aside from that, the beauty of this race of ours is the fact that we're different. We have these differences. And those differences are things to celebrate and to enjoy, and they're interesting, they're beautiful. So when as you grow, especially if you're young, you're growing up here, you're growing up in this country, there are two pieces of land that are going to matter to you. The whole planet does. The whole planet does. It's all Mother Earth. But there are two things. The land that you live on, this amtak, this ant land that you're living on, that's taking you understand what I mean? Like your aunt is not as in the insect, but as in your father's sister. Yeah, this land that has nourished you and taken care of you, you owe this land a certain degree of loyalty and love, and you owe it to offer it your best and to try and to prosper upon it and for it to flourish. But there's also a land that you also owe something to. And you can't act like that doesn't matter altogether. You can't. And if you do, then that's going to cause some problems for you. For your children, for the next generation, it will cause some. You can never, ever disconnect yourself and detach yourself from your origins. And no one has done that, and that works. That has never happened historically and worked. Whenever that happens, it causes some degree of difficulty. Yeah, it causes some degree of difficulty for the people who do it, because there's a disconnection, there's a detachment, and then you don't feel like you struggle with it. So keep that in mind. The Prophet ﷺ, he's only going 400 kilometers north. Today it's all one country anyways, so no one cares. Like you wouldn't even see this as a thing. But to him it was ﷺ. This is where he was born. This is where his father and grandfather and great grandfather. This is where his whole family was born. This is where he grew up as a child. That's where he got married. That's where he had his children. That's where he lived his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. How old is he now? He's 53 years old. He's 53 years old. He's not leaving Mecca as a young person. He's 53. People don't move from one country to the other permanently at that age, unless they absolutely have to. People stay on their land. They stay in their home. At a certain age, they just stay, and they live on it, and they die on it, and they just stick to it. And there's honor in doing that. The Prophet ﷺ left because he carried a message that he had to spread. He had a message, he had a cause, he had a mission he had to fulfill, ﷺ, so he had to leave. He didn't want to. He stood there with tears running down his face in pain. He was sad that he had to leave. But he had to leave, and he made dua that maybe one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send him back, allow him to come back to his home again, ﷺ. And as he is standing there in tears, Jibreel would come to him again, this time not to tell him about the plot, but to give him Quran. إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. Indeed, the one who has made the Quran obligatory upon you to carry. You're leaving because of the Quran. That's why you're leaving. You're leaving because Allah made the Quran obligatory upon you to carry. You have to see this Quran through. You have to see the revelation through, and you have to spread, and you have to teach, and you have to live it. So the one who made the Quran obligatory for you to carry, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. One day He'll send you back. He'll bring you back one day. So don't sweat it. It's okay. One day you'll come back. It'll take a while. It'll take maybe 7 years before he can make his way back, alayhi salatu wasalam, but he would. This is this is what it looks like today to go from Masjid al-Haram to Ghar Thawr. This is the Ghar, the cave that the Prophet ﷺ would go and be. So by car it's around 20, 25, 22 minutes. This is where Masjid al-Haram, the Prophet ﷺ lived very close to the Kaaba, by the way. Like his home was just a little bit north of the Kaaba, it wasn't very far. So, but to take this on foot is around, or by horse or camel, it's around 2.5 hours or so. And that's just to get to the beginning of the mountain. Going up the mountain is another 45 minutes, easily. So it's not. This is what it looks like. This is what Ghar Thawr looks like. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people go there and they make all these they draw stuff and write things, so it kind of ruins it a little bit. But if you go there, you're able to see where the Prophet ﷺ and where Abu Bakr would be. And this is the opening the cave. This is where people stood, and this is where the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr hidden. And I'll tell you the story in a few moments, inshallah. So, ﷺ, the way he put this all together, just put this for you is that he was going to go south of Mecca and stay in a cave for 3 days and 3 nights. And Abu Bakr's son Abdullah and his daughter Asma would be responsible in the middle of the night, they alternate, to come and give information and bring food, because they left almost with nothing when they did, because it was very quick. Jibreel told them that it's going to happen today. You have to leave now. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had everything set up, but he didn't have enough time to actually pack all that he wanted to pack, so they had to leave very, very late. So Asma there was no reason for people to assume or expect or suspect that Asma was doing anything, because Asma bint Abu Bakr was 8 months pregnant at this time. Like she was very pregnant, she was very obviously pregnant. So for her to be walking that distance I showed you was very unlikely. But she would do this, and of course she performed hijrah right after them, and she gave birth in Medina, and her son was the first newborn from the Muhajirin in Medina, and his name is Abdullah ibn Zubayr, radiallahu anhu, one of the great Sahaba, one of the great scholars of Islam, and one of the Khulafa of Arabia during his time. So the Prophet ﷺ makes his way with Abu Bakr to this southern cave called Ghar Thawr. They hit those camels, and the camels gallop far away. There's a man called Amr ibn Fuhayra. He is a shepherd, and he would bring his sheep, and he would go back and forth on their tracks with his sheep, so that Arab couldn't pick up, so no one could pick up the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ's camels. And he would do this every day. Every time Abdullah or Isma came and brought food, he would do the same thing. So once he left ﷺ, they weren't able to pick him up immediately because of the plan that he had put in place. The 9 people went to the Prophet ﷺ's house. They poked their heads up over the wall, and they saw him sleeping, or they saw someone sleeping in the bed. That bed that someone's been sleeping in for the last couple of months. So it was very easy. So they stood there for a couple of hours. It was getting late. It started to get late at night. It became dark, and it was kind of up, he was still lying there. And they were throwing these stones at him, as they did every day. And Abu Jahl, who had been waiting for this and still hadn't happened, he came to see what happened. Why has this not happened yet? Because he hasn't moved yet. So Abu Jahl looks over and he sees someone sleeping in the bed. So he takes a rock and he throws. But Sayyidina Ali, whenever he got hit by the rock, he moved a little bit. Like he went, ugh, like he kind of moved. So Abu Jahl saw him when he hit him with the rock. He went, ugh. It's like, that's not Muhammad. We've been doing this for months. He doesn't move. So they break in the door. And they go in and they take off the covers, and it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they beat him up, radiallahu anhu. And then they tie him to within the house of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, trying to get information out of him. Now Ali didn't know where they went. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam did not. He kept his cards very close. He didn't tell even Ali where he was going. He didn't let him know. Ali has no idea that he went to Hijrah. He went to Yathrib. So they all started galloping towards Medina. But he didn't go that way. He went to the opposite. So Sayyidina Ali didn't even have the information of exactly what was going to happen. After them doing this with the Sayyidina Ali for a while, not finding anything, they let him go, radiallahu anhu. And he stayed there for the next couple of days, giving back the amanat, taking all the trusts, and giving them back to those who left them with him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Abu Jahl, of course, it didn't work out, because all the 9 men who were standing there ready with their swords, killing Ali is not going to do anything. I always think about this part of the story, because that was a scary time for Sayyidina Ali to sleep in the Prophet ﷺ's bed. To sleep all night and to stay during the day, while the Prophet ﷺ kind of got out during noon. It's a scary thing, because he could easily get killed in a fury of rage of Abu Jahl. They could easily take his life, and it wouldn't really do much. He was asked later, of course, he became Amir al-Mu'mineen, radiallahu anhu wardah, and they would ask him about that day, about the day he slept in the Prophet ﷺ's bed. فقال ما من ليلة نمتها كانت أهدأ في حياتي من ليلتها. I never slept so well in the entirety of my life than the night I slept in the Prophet ﷺ's bed. And I only woke up when they started throwing rocks at me during the day, bothering me. But it was the most, it was the best sleep of all of my life, sleeping. And it's funny, because him saying that reminds me of something else that was said. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam al-Khalil, when he was catapulted into that fire, and he stayed, and the Quran says, قُلْنَا, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, he says, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيم. Oh fire, be peaceful and cool for Ibrahim. Later on, Ibrahim in his life would be asked, tell us about your some of the worst days. They interview people of fame or of accomplishment. What's the worst time of your life? What was the best time of your life? فَقَالَ, the best time of my life were the days I spent in the fire. when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the fire to be bardan wa salaman. So I spent a time where it was peaceful, it was cool. I didn't want to leave. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Similarly, Sayyidina Ali, in the bed of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, found that as well. So you think of the planning so far. This is what he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. So first of all, he put together this little plot of Ali being in a spot, right? He made sure Ali radiallahu anhu stayed in the spot. He left at noon, alayhi salatu wasalam. At a time where people don't usually, the spies are going to go and sit in the shade and take a nap because it's just very, very hot and difficult to move. He leaves from the back, alayhi salatu wasalam, like he makes sure that he doesn't leave from the regular routes that people leave. He leaves in between the neighborhoods, behind the houses, alayhi salatu wasalam. They both cover their faces, alayhi salatu wasalam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. They go south, the opposite of the direction that their destination is in. They stay there, not for a couple of hours, they stay there for 3 days, for 3 whole days and 3 nights. And if you go to Ghar Thawr and you look at it, you understand that was not a very, that was not comfortable. That was a very uncomfortable thing for anyone to do. To be there for 3 days and 3 nights, the thirst and the hunger and the fear and the heat, it was not comfortable at all. And then the other one is making sure that Amr ibn Fuhayra went back and forth with his sheep to make sure there were no tracks. And Asma bin Abi Bakr, she is pregnant, so if she's taking a stroll in a direction, people aren't going to be suspicious. Abu Jahl, despite that, he would go to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's home, and he would knock on the door. And Asma would open, and Aisha, and he would ask, Aina Abuki, where's your father? Because they suspected that if he left alayhi salatu wasalam, Abu Bakr should know where he is because he's close to him, or Abu Bakr is with him. And she said, I don't know where's my father, la adri. So he'd ask her a couple of times. وكان رجلا خبيثا. Abu Jahl was a very wicked man. قال فلطمها على قرطها فكسرها وأدماها. And he slapped her over the face, and her earring fell, and she bled from her mouth. رضي الله عنها وأرضاها. Due to the brutality of this man. But he couldn't get anything out of them, basically. He couldn't. And he had a nice little addition to the story is that once it became known that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Abdullah ibn Abi Quhafa had left his father, Abu Bakr's father, who was an old man, like an old man, and then at the end he stays alive long enough for this to end. He's even older of a man then. But he was an old man, he was mostly blind, and he's Abu Quhafa, who didn't accept Islam until very, very late in this whole story. He would come to the Prophet, his son's home, Abu Bakr's home, and he would ask, and Asma tells the story, and I like this story because I think it's cool. He comes to the house, and he said, Aina dhahab? Where did he go? Because he doesn't like the fact that his son is Muslim. So where did he go? فقالت لا أدري, we don't know where he went. فقال هل ترك لكم شيئا? Did he leave anything for you? وقالت أسماء وكان قد أخذ معه المال. He had taken with him all the wealth, because if he didn't, then Quraysh would steal it from us. And they didn't leave any. He had to take it because they need to pay to get their way there, like to get their way to make their way to Yathrib. So فقالت فأخذت حجرين فوضعتهما في قربة وحركتها. So I brought a couple of pebbles and I put them in a container, and I shook the container so that it sounded like there was money inside. وقلت ترك لنا شيئا. He left us something. فقال إذا نعم. Okay, then that's fine if he left something. تقول وما ترك لنا شيئا ولكن أردت أن أسكت الشيخ. He left nothing, but I wanted the old man to go away because I didn't want this to cause a problem. But he didn't leave anything, radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And you find this in his life, radiallahu anhu, time and time again. And sometimes you may think that, his family. Never did his wife or his children ever complain of his lack of generosity, alayhi ridwanullah. Ever. Never did they say that he's someone who was someone who never took care of his family, who didn't prioritize his family. No. He was just someone who had a level of tawakkul, and a level of that he and his family had that level of tawakkul where he did this and they were fine with it. And this would not be the first time, nor will it be the last time that he would do it, radiallahu anhu, within his lifetime, where he would take all of his wealth, all of it, and give it to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, or to the Muslims, or for the cause of Islam, and leave nothing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would grant him a way out. This story is if you're going to listen to it, then you must know what you're learning from it. This is the most important lesson of tawakkul that we have within our deen at all. You're not going to find a better example for it. You're not going to understand a better story for me to tell regarding this topic, the concept of tawakkul, because of how this whole thing happened. The Prophet ﷺ, I shared with you his plan. He planned this out to the best of his ability. He planned it out. every step of the way he knew what he was doing, alayhi salatu wasalam. He made sure that he dotted all of the I's, he crossed all the T's, he did everything to the book. He made sure that he didn't leave anything uncovered. Now I know that they tell you the story of the Prophet ﷺ throwing sand in the eyes of the 9. We don't have good evidence for that. We really don't. So it could have happened. I just don't have good evidence for it. When I don't have good evidence for a story, I tend not to share it, just so that I don't share with you something that you can't authenticate later on in your life if you're studying and reading in books. But the story exists in the books of Seerah. And it's there. I just don't have strong evidence to support that it actually happened. And the ayat of Surah Yasin are beautiful, and they don't need to be attached to this part of his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. This ayah was never really attached to that story to begin with. And whether it did happen in that fashion or not doesn't really change much in the story, just in case you've heard it before and you're wondering. I don't have good evidence, so I don't really share stories that I don't have good evidence for. So he would do everything, alayhi salatu wasalam, he would do everything to the best of his ability. He exhausted all of his resources in planning his escape, or planning his immigration, alayhi salatu wasalam. Which is the first element of what tawakkul is that you have to do your absolute best. No one is asking you for more than your best. No one has ever asked you for more than your best, and they never will. You just asked to do your best, but you have to define what your best means. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, tried everything. He made sure that he planned out Sayyidina Ali's post. He left at the right time. He went in the opposite direction. He had people cover their tracks. He spent a certain amount of time. He did all of that. He kept his cards closed. He didn't tell anybody. No one in Mecca really knew what was going to happen. So that after Abu Jahl found out that the Prophet ﷺ got out and Abu Bakr was with him, they got very upset. They got very mad. So the 9 men and maybe another 100 on horseback started to gallop in every direction to see if they can find him, alayhi salatu wasalam. And they put a bounty on his head of 100 camels. Which is a lot. It's like 100 cars. It's a lot of money. So it was a big deal. Out of the bounty hunters, when they hear 100 camels, like this is a whale, this is a big fish. We need to find out who this is. And so people were looking for him, alayhi salatu wasalam, actively trying to figure out where he went. And of course this is very difficult. Now, despite him doing everything correctly, alayhi salatu wasalam, everything, despite him taking all of the asbab, trying his absolute best, going beyond actually what a normal person would do to plan something. He went beyond what the norm is. Somehow, they still made it. Not in the direction. They didn't end up going in the correct direction of where he was, alayhi salatu wasalam. Not only were they in the right area, they chose the exact cave. If you go to that area where Ghar Thawr is, what you're going to notice is that the whole region is just mountains and caves. That's all it is. Like if I tell you, okay, go to the south of Mecca, we'll meet in a cave. We will never meet, ever. We will never cross. It's impossible. There's way too many caves. Which one? It is impossible for us to ever cross paths. There's so many of them, and they're all over the place. So for the mushrikeen to actually go in the right direction, choose the right area, choose the right mountain, and make it to the cave, it was just very abnormal. It's just very normal that they were able to get exactly where he was. And I want you to put yourself in the Prophet ﷺ's position. So let's talk about them getting there. They got to the cave. رضي الله عنه سيدنا أبو بكر يا رسول الله انتظر حتى أستبرئه لك. Wait, I'm going to go inside and make sure it's clean. So he goes in to this cave, and he looks he looks for every hole, and he looks for any animals or anything on the inside. He's making sure it's all there's no snakes or scorpions or anything else that can kill them. He cleans it all out. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Abu Bakr, أتخشى علي? Are you scared for me? فقال نعم بأبي أنت وأمي يا رسول الله. He said, yes, I sacrificed my family for you. فإني إن مت فإنما أنا رجل وإن مت فأنت الأمة. If I die, I'm just a person. But if you die, you're the ummah. Of course I am. So they would enter and they stay in the cave. And in one of the stories, one of the nights they're sleeping, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is, and they're sleeping side by side, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr sees a snake come out of one of the holes. So he puts his toe in it to close it. And the snake bites him. So radiallahu anhu goes in pain, but he sees the Prophet ﷺ sleeping, which was something he did very rarely. So he didn't want to wake him up. So he sat there quietly. But he was in so much pain, he started to tear. So one of his tears fell off his face and hit the arm of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ, after the second tear, he woke up. He looked and he saw Abu Bakr crying. فقال ما لك? Why are you crying? فقال قرصت, I've been bitten. فقال أخرج, so you pull out your foot. So he pulled out his foot and he had been bitten. فأخذ من ريقه صلى الله عليه وسلم فمسح عليه فبرئ رضي الله عنه. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام took from his and he rubbed Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq رضي الله عنه his toe and he was وشفي رضي الله عنه وارضاه. They would stay there, and on the third night, the day they were supposed to leave, I want you to take a moment and think about this. Imagine this. The day that they're going to leave is after the agreement, and they have to go at the right time because the Prophet ﷺ also planned the person that was going to get them to Yathrib. They weren't going to go on the normal route. No, they were going to go through like jungles and places where no one goes this route. So he needed someone who knows how to do this. His name was Abdullah ibn Urayqit. Abdullah ibn Urayqit was his name. And Abdullah ibn Urayqit basically was not even a Muslim, but he was someone the Prophet ﷺ trusted, and he paid. And he said, on this day, at this hour, we will meet at this place. And you will have 2 camels and you'll take us. And he had paid them already. So they couldn't just get up and leave to Yathrib anyways. They had to meet at the place. So a couple of hours before the meet, he spent 3 days, just a few more hours. They're sitting in the cave and they hear voices. They hear voices. You're in an area that is absolutely uninhabited. There's no one there. This is not, there are no human beings. There are no tents, there are no people, nothing. This is just mountains, it's nothing. There's no living things. And they hear voices. And the voices are getting closer. And it's not 1 or 2 voices, it's a lot of voices. And then they start to be able to recognize these voices. They hear Abu Jahl, and they hear Uqbah, and they hear Abu Sufyan, and they hear these names, these people who absolutely hate them. And they're not walking somewhere far away. They're coming up the mountain that they are in. There's no 2, 3 caves on this mountain. It's just one. And they're coming up. Think about that. This is what's happening. They're coming up. They have nowhere to go. Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr, there's nowhere to go. They can't just start running. This is not, I know that you watch a lot of movies and you probably think that, most of these things are lie. You can't just start running. This is not going to work. They're not going to get anywhere. So what are they going to do? So they go and they hide in a part of the cave that's a little bit small. It's very, very small. It's very tight. Like you have a cave. The cave is like an open area, and then there's a little opening that you could maybe, if you're thin enough, someone fat like me can't get in, but someone a little bit thinner can probably get inside. But then if you get 2 people in, you're basically squished. You're in full physical contact, and you can barely even hide your feet, or it's almost impossible. So what are they going to do? They go and they hide, hoping that they're just looking around. Not only did they come up the right mountain, they enter and they stand inside the cave. They stand inside the cave where they were just sitting a moment ago. Where the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr were sitting a moment ago, now they're standing. At that moment, what do you think? If you were in his place, ﷺ, what are you thinking? It's over. Khalas, we're caught. We're 2.5 hours south in the opposite direction. They made it to the cave. They're here. Like in his mind, they already know we're here. Someone told them this is the cave, then they're coming, and they're going to toy with us for the next hour or so before they kill us. And that was the understanding they both had, is that this is the end. So Abu Bakr is in tears. He's sad. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him that phrase that you find in Surah At-Tawbah. He tells him, لا تحزن. Don't be sad. He didn't say don't be scared. No, this is not about fear. He's not saying don't be afraid. We'll be fine. No. They're both at that moment, they both accepted their destiny. They accepted their fate. That it didn't work. We tried our best. We planned this out to the minute. We did everything we could, but it didn't work out. It was nice knowing. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, we did our best. So he doesn't tell Abu Bakr, لا تخف. Because لا تخف is different than لا تحزن. You find both in the Quran. لا تخف ولا تحزن. This, he didn't tell him don't be afraid. Because people think, this is where I have a problem with this story. People think that the Prophet ﷺ knew he was going to be fine. He didn't. No, he did not. That takes away any beauty of the story. If you think that he knew that this is all going to be fine. No. In his mind, we're done. They're in the cave. We're right inside. They're probably just standing there, smirking at each other, laughing, waiting for us to come out of the little hole that we have shoved ourselves in. So that's what they're thinking, that this is over. They may just take their swords and start stabbing us until we die because we can't even move anyways. It's going to take us like 50 minutes to get out of this thing because there's no space. So he looks at Abu Bakr and he says, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. Don't be sad. Indeed, Allah is with us. ما ظنك باثنين الله ثالثهما. What is your assumption of two people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the third one with them? He is not saying we're going to be protected. He's saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not upset. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at us right now and say, shame on you, you made a mistake, you didn't do this well, you failed. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at us, the both of us, Ya Abu Bakr, and says, good for you, you did it well, you fought well, you did your job. And if this is the qada that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us, then we accept the qada that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us. It was an act of bravery. It was an act of bravery. Alayhi salatu was getting Abu Bakr to be more brave, be courageous. We're going to die right now. Don't be upset about this. Don't be sad that it's ending. Don't be sad it's going to end. Everything ends. We did our best. We did our best. May you find solace in the fact that you and I did our best and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on our side. He has not turned his back away from us subhanahu wa ta'ala. La tahzan. That is the meaning of this verse. It's not the concept that, he knew it was all going to be fine. Nah, there's nothing in that. He, alayhi salatu had certain aspects of knowledge throughout his life, alayhi salatu wasalam, that other people didn't have, of course, alayhi salatu wasalam. He is Rasulullah, he is Habibullah, alayhi salatu wasalam. But in this moment, he didn't know what was going to happen next. He looked at Abu Bakr and he didn't say, don't worry, chill, we'll be fine. He said, don't be scared, don't be sad. Don't be sad. It's okay. We fought well, we did our best here. And then they waited for their fate, alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is the tawakkul lesson. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, so you planned well, Muhammad, eh? Sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You planned well. Yes, you did. You planned very well. You did everything right. You did everything right. And you're in the place where no one can find. It's not you that makes things happen. It's not you. It's not the human being. It's not the planning of the human being. It is me. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Muhammad, I'm going to bring them not only to your region or your area or to your mountain. I'm going to have them come and stand right beside you. I'm going to put them inside the cave that you and Abu Bakr are breathing in. I'm going to have someone stand on top of the cave, forgive me, to urinate. Where he's standing there urinating, and if he looked, there's a hole above like they're in this small little area, this small part of the cave, and there's an opening on top, a small opening where they can breathe through. He is standing urinating right beside that. All he had to do was just look in the hole. He would see a head, like you would see the hair of one of them, like you would see hair, someone's inside. He didn't. He went there, he stood there, he did his business, and he never looked. The guys who were standing in that cave over there, right? They're standing inside the cave. The entrance is right there. All someone had to do was go down and fix his shoes, and there's Abu Bakr's foot. He's sitting right there. He can't pull it in. There's no space to do it. All they had to do, standing there, is just their eyeballs just had to look like this. That's it. They just had to go like this, and they would see him sitting right there. They didn't. They didn't. Because who controls all this stuff? Like who controls the movement of the pupils and the head? Who decides what you're going to see and what you're not going to see? You think you plan well. You think you're on top of your game. All right. Do your planning. You have to do it. If you don't do your planning, I will not be pleased with you. That's why he said, La tahzan. Because he knew he had done his absolute best. Do your planning. Okay, now you've done everything. I'm going to bring them to your cave and have them stand right beside you and breathe beside you and not see you. There. Now, Abu Bakr and the Prophet are looking at each other like, what's going on? Why haven't they pulled us out yet? They're just looking at each other. What's happening? They're standing there talking. It took them a while before they figured out they haven't noticed it yet. They haven't noticed us yet. Like after a couple of minutes, they're like, they don't know we're in here. And Abu Bakr says, Ya Rasulullah, لو نظر أحدهم إلى شراك نعله لرآنا. If anyone looks and adjusts his shahata or his he'll see us. And the Prophet says, not a word. What are you doing? Blow our cover? They don't know we're there. He brought them, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brought them to his cave, alayhi salatu wasalam. and had them stand right there. And you can't see them. You won't see them. And then they left. They come out of the cave. All right, we can make the meat. We can make the meat. Let's go. The guy is waiting for us. We have to run. So they run over to the meeting. You know what I've always thought about? I know I should end, but I have to tell this. I've always thought about the conversation that would happen between the mushrikeen later, when they find out, oh, he made it to Medina. He made it to Yathrib. I know. I have to finish this. I can't. I won't be able to sleep at night. He made it to Yathrib. Well, how did he go? Oh yeah, he was in the cave. Which one? The cave that we were at. Where? We were standing right there. Yeah, there was a small little. Well, I thought you looked in. Well, I thought you did. Yeah, Flan, did you not? Who looked? I don't know. No one said. No one looked in the. Are you kidding me? He was there? There was 15 of us with swords. He was unarmed, stuck in an area. Like basically, he and Abu Bakr were stuck together. We could have ended this whole story. None of you thought to look under. I can imagine Abu Jahl literally just cursing them out for half an hour, slapping people around, firing people, breaking tables. You're telling me he was the cave you were in. You stood there behind him. Why? How do you know this? Because Abu Bakr would later, radiallahu anhu, he would send back to them saying, by the way, he would answer a question. Like Abu Jahl was saying something in the cave. He asked a question. Abu Bakr remembered the question. Abu Bakr, when he got to Medina, he sent back the answer to Abu Jahl. He sent back to say, yeah, by the way, that was the answer to your question. Abu Jahl was like, because Abu Jahl was like, no, impossible. Impossible he was in the same cave. No, he was in the same cave. That's it. This is the lesson of tawakkul. You do your absolute best. But then the delivery of the result is in the hands of Allah alone. It's in Allah's hands alone. No one else delivers results ever. The outcomes are never up to you, ever. They're always in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the lesson of the hijrah. That's why they made this day, the day where we started counting our years. From that moment when he did that, alayhi salatu, when he planned everything to detail, and he did his absolute best, and Allah said, I'm going to bring them to your cave and have them stand there and not see you. That's what I'm going to do. So you understand who it is that's going to get you to Mecca, to Yathrib. Who it is that supports you, who it is that protects you. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the lesson you learn. I'm going to end with that. I'll let Brother Ali inshallah do Kahoot inshallah until it's adhan. Isha, I hope that was a benefit to you. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Hope you guys are all doing amazing. We're going to get quickly onto the Kahoot because we only have... Okay, we'll prolong our show a little bit.